Hello and welcome. We are doing the resource review, and I'm so happy to be sharing with you a resource that I have used for years. I use it as the basis, or when I was the executive director of the Hospice Society of the Columbia Valley, I used it as the basis for our support groups. It is a book that comes with its own companion journal, and the book is Dr. Alan Wolfelt's Understanding Your Grief. And the subtitle on it is 10 Essential Touchstones for Finding Hope and Healing Your Heart. And so this week's topic has been all about the uniqueness of your grief, understanding the uniqueness of your grief, and whereas we talked a little bit about it in the video earlier this week, we got into it a bit more with the podcast. And so what I wanted to do is just read a little bit from this book and explain to you how, if this is something that is touching you, this book may be just what you need to help clarify what I've been talking about and give you some more guidance and support. So in this book, in what he calls touchstone number 3, Embrace the Uniqueness of Your Grief, on page 35, what he says is, the wilderness of your grief is your wilderness. It is a creation of your unique self, the unique person who died, and the unique circumstances of your life. Your wilderness may be rockier or more level than others. Your path may be revealed in a straight line, or more likely it may be full of twists and turns. On your wilderness, you will encounter places that are meaningful only to you, and you will experience the topography in your own way. And so when I talked earlier in the previous video about it really has to do with you and how you process grief and your personality and what you're inclined to do. Because some of us are extroverts, some of us have to go out there, some of us have to be talking to people and sharing with people, and we're more than happy to share stories, and others of us are introverts, and it's just our natural way to go inside when something is bothering us or when we're having a hard time. And so we may find that we cloister ourselves and that we stay in our homes. And either way is fine. There is no right or wrong. You are the expert in your grief. I'm going to say that again and again and again because it's something I fundamentally believe. Healthy Mourning Revolution, which is the company that I founded, it is the source of my work, is all predicated on we convert our grief to mourning in healthy ways when we listen into our inner guidance and we follow where that inner guidance wants to go, where it is taking us. And what I love about this book is that in this chapter, after he gets into this, he then goes into the whys, and I'll even read this next little bit that explains how this chapter works. It says, this touchstone invites you to explore some of the unique reasons your grief is what it is, the whys of your journey through the wilderness. The whys that follow are not all the whys in the world, of course, just some of the most common. As you write out your responses in the companion journal, I believe you will discover an increased understanding of the uniqueness of your grief. And what I love about the way he talks about the whys, and I can even kind of show you how he puts the whys out and maps it all out for you. The whys are what help you to understand the uniqueness of your grief. So one of the areas that he points out is your relationship with the person who died. And I kind of touched on this again in the first video this week, where what I talked about is that relationship can determine so much. If it was a peaceful and a loving relationship, did you say everything there was to say, or did you have stuff that was unsaid? Was it not a peaceful relationship? Were you not in a good place with each other when your loved one died? Do you not even consider them a loved one? You know, for many of us, our parents are not people that we look up to, nor are they people that we liked even. Our siblings the same. So your relationship with that person will really impact your grief journey and what your grief journey looks like. And again, that's the ups and downs he's talking about. The circumstances of the death. Was it an expected death? Was it a traumatic death? Was there a long goodbye attached to it? Did you have anticipatory grief leading up to it? All of these things are things that this book taps into. Why number 3? The ritual or funeral experience. Did you get a funeral? You know, amidst this whole COVID situation with COVID-19, many people are not having funerals, and even if they are having funerals, they're not surrounded by their loved ones. It's a goodbye that's really challenging for them, or they didn't get to have that opportunity to be with loved ones to support them. And even though I just said, is it a goodbye, I want to emphasize, as I did in last week's talk, that one of the paradoxes of mourning is we have to say hello before we say goodbye. And if we didn't have a funeral, then we never had the opportunity to say hello to the beginning of our grief process. So if you want to hear more about funerals and rituals, I invite you to go back to last week's video in the Healthy Mourning channel. I invite you to go back to last week's podcast where we talked about rites and rituals and the importance of them in our grief process. All of these things hopefully will help, and last week's book was also The Paradoxes of Mourning by Dr. Alan Wolfelt, so you may want to look at that video as well. Why number 4, the people in your life. Do you have people in your life who are supportive of you? Do you have people in your life who are challenging to you right now? All of these things are parts of what influence your particular grief. And even if you've had a grief of someone close to you, the grief of this person will be different than the way you walk through the grief of the last person, in part because that person is different, your relationship with them is different than the relationship with the first person, but also in part because you've grown from that last grief, and how you approach grief now will be different. And if we learn how to do healthy mourning, then we discover that with every new grief, because unfortunately that's the pathway of life, we lose many people who are near and dear to us. We learn what our grief journey is, and we learn how to lean in on our grief and lean into it. So why number 5, your unique personality, which again grows and expands as you do your grief work. Why number 6, the unique personality of the person who died. Why number 7, your gender, whether you're male or female. And male or female is not just something that determines a difference because of the differences between men and women, but also because culturally what we allow men to do versus what we allow women to do in the grieving process. Which brings us to number 8, which is the cultural background. What is your cultural background? What does it tell you about grief? What were you taught as you were growing up about how to grieve and mourn in healthy ways? Number 9, your religious or spiritual background. What are the rituals around that? And what does that tell you about how to question everything that's coming up for you right now, and how to release everything that's coming up for you right now? Why number 10, other crises or stresses in your life right now, which of course impact it. We have so many stresses in our life right now with COVID-19, with all of the protests that are happening. There's so much going on in the world. The world, literally the sand underneath our feet, is shifting every single day, and on some days every single hour. That's stressful. The economic stress is off of what's been happening, and that is contributing to the uniqueness of the grief that you're experiencing right now. Your experience with loss and death in the past. Do you have experience with it? Have you learned some tools and techniques and coping mechanisms? Or is this all new and fresh for you, and you're needing to find some tools and techniques? Why number 12, your physical health. How are you doing right now? It's really important for you to assess all of these things. So if it would be helpful for you to do a deeper dive, one of the things I strongly encourage is Dr. Wolfelt's book. And of course, I'm going to reach over here and get the companion journal. These books come together. I will, of course, put the link on how to get these books into the description down below. And then I'm also going to put in there the link on how to get a hold of me. I am at healthymourning.com, and mourning is mourning, so healthymourning.com. And you can get a private consultation with me. I do a free consultation to kind of assess the situation and see if us working together would be a good next step for you, and for you to feel into whether that is true for you. Because again, I believe you are the expert on your grief. Only you know what you need, and so you'll know whether it's true or not for you to work with me. We also have a Facebook group called Healthy Mourning Revolution, and I invite you to join the group. It's a closed group. You need to answer some questions in order to get into the group. I welcome you to do that. And then we do our Healthy Mourning Revolution live launch every 8 weeks or so. So you can always register for the next live launch by going to that website. I encourage you to subscribe to this page. Every week I post 2 videos. At the beginning of the week, I introduce the topic of the week. Then we go over to the podcast where we go a little deeper, and you can also subscribe to the podcast into the topic. And then at the end of the week, we post a resource in case you want to study more on this particular topic in a deeper way. So please write me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to talk to me about, and maybe we'll make that a topic for either a week or a month in the future. Until then, I wish you ease and grace in your grief journey. All contact information is below, and remember to subscribe to the page. Namaste.